Hey, this is Seth Ressler of The Debrief. Becky and I are on vacation this week, but we didn't want to leave you empty-handed. So what we often do is we record interviews and we put them as bonus episodes in our mobile app. If you have downloaded the mobile app, that's the only place you can hear these exclusive interviews. And we wanted to give you a taste. Here's one right here.
Check. 1, 2, 3.
The Debrief. This is the Debrief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's arts
and entertainment scene.
This is the Debrief.
Hi, this is Becky Scarcello, and you're listening to The Debrief. Today I'm sitting down with Madison Reitzel and Kyle Sweeney of The Loaded Die here at the Rust Belt Market in Ferndale. So I want to start out by asking you, Kyle, what's The Loaded Die all about? How'd you get started, and what's your mission?
Our mission is to make tabletop gaming, board games, role-playing games, dice games, card games, more mainstream, and bring it back to something that people think of as an activity that they do on a weekly basis, as opposed to a nostalgia kind of activity from childhood and whatnot. When I was growing up in the 90s, there were TV commercials for board games. Everyone played board games all the time, and then people, I think, kind of assumed they stopped making games in the 90s and that they stopped being fun in the 90s, when in reality, a lot of great designers have kind of pushed the industry forward and made newer, more clever games that take less time to play in a lot of cases and are more engaging from start to finish. It's not always the case that everything's like Monopoly, which came out in the 20s when people had unlimited spare time. So now we have a lot of stuff, and the goal really is to bring people together around games. So, games are really the medium for the actual product, which is kind of community. And once people understand that they can play games and have fun, then they congregate together more often. And in this decade, we want to kind of leverage the space available in Metro Detroit at breweries, coffee shops, event spaces, and use that space, fill it with people that want to hang out together over a medium that's, analog, completely analog, and allows for conversation and intimate relationships.
So I think you hit on something important about building a community. Like I know with my family, we play games a lot at Christmas time, holidays, and every time we do, it's like, why don't we do this more often? And why don't we break this out? And so it's a lot about, stepping away from your cell phone and just being with people. So some of the things you do, you encourage strangers to play games together, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, every single one of our events is open to individuals or groups of people that want to come in and play. So when individuals come in, we have a guru. So our business is in part retail, but the much larger part is the events that we run around Metro Detroit. At each of one of these events, we have what we call a game guru, and they're familiar with all of the games available at that location. And a lot of times they're familiar with the community that's already established there. So when a new person comes, and we get a lot of people from outside of Detroit that have moved here for work and something, and they find us on Meetup or Facebook, and they come in and their first contact is with that guru who says, hey, yes, you're welcome here. Yes, we'll be able to find something for you to play. I know these people over here. They're going to be starting a new game in 10 minutes. Why don't you, check it out? I'll introduce you around. And it makes it so that people, that barrier is broken down in terms of getting into the game, learning how to play. There are a lot of obstacles to getting into gaming, especially with strangers, and 100% of them are kind of in someone's head. There's no real obstacle, only perceived obstacles that, hey, I'm not going to understand how to play this. This isn't for me. You guys are much more hardcore. I'm too dumb to play this. This must be some mega strategy game, when in reality, when you start playing, most games take 5 minutes to get into, and it's just a matter of breaking that down and people realizing that, hey, I want to play this game, and these people want to play it with me.
So you started talking about events. Madison, I want to ask you, what kind of events specifically does the Loaded Die put on, and what type of people go?
Yeah, so we really started with doing mostly board game events. So these weekly events that we do at different breweries and tap rooms and coffee shops and stuff, those are all board games where you can come and play. But we've really expanded to a lot more other communities that we saw needed to kind of be filled. So we've also started doing a ton of euchre events. We have this newer event called Playlist Bingo, where you just come and listen to like different themed music and play bingo at the same time. And then our games day is our 12-hour games day, which kind of takes all of that stuff and combines it into a fun 13-hour session of gaming. Also with Dungeons & Dragons, the role-playing game, we've noticed that over the past 2 to 3 years has really, the idea behind it has really changed. It used to be an extremely really nerdy thing that would happen in people's basements, very a la Stranger Things. And since even that show has come out, people are really getting into the role-playing games, and we've started doing that at a lot of different events too.
I love that you said that, because when I was in high school in the 80s, my boyfriend would play Dungeons and Dragons, and I didn't want to tell any of my friends that I was dating someone that did that. And but I love games, and I just think I love that, almost like that quote unquote nerd culture or whatever is kind of coming out and realizing like, hey, this is fun. Like, we don't need to make fun of it. So you touched a little bit on your games day. Now, you've done this for the past few years. This year's your 5th annual. It's coming up on April 6th. Can you tell us a little bit about how people can get involved in that?
Yeah, definitely. You can go ahead and buy tickets at the door, or you can get them ahead of time. I think tickets are $15. Our members will get in for free as well. But yeah, if you want to get involved, you can just kind of come in. If you don't know anything about games, there's still going to be people there that'll be able to get you into games as well. That's our thing, is we want to get people into the hobby. So if you don't know anything, you're always welcome at our events. And we're really going to have a big variety of stuff. So we're going to have 2 big board game tournaments that we're doing, a euchre tournament as well. There's going to be a consignment store where people will be selling their used games that you can pick up for a lot cheaper too. And then we'll be doing raffles every single hour with different new modern board games that have been coming out too. And that's going to be at Brew Detroit down in Corktown. So they've got a really huge space, really good beer as well. We do beer mimosas in the morning. It's fun and it's casual, and it's one of our favorite events to run, I think.
So tell us a little bit about this retail spot that you have here. And it's a big selection of games. You got this big ladder here. You can go up high on the shelves. And what do you have to offer? And if people don't find what they want here, can you get it?
We've done a lot with this small space inside the Rust Belt Market. When we started the store in 2015, we kind of took a look around, and in my opinion, we weren't unaware of the fact that Amazon exists and that what we're selling is basically a commodity in the marketplace. What we did have to offer people, and what Amazon really can't, and I think part of the reason that these games aren't as mainstream in the United States as they are in Europe, Japan, South Korea, is because the distribution does not allow people to interact with somebody that knows the games well enough to be able to recommend something to somebody that they're actually going to get to the table and play. So a lot of people take what I call the shotgun approach to finding a new board game, which is they go on Amazon, they do what everyone does and look for the games with 4.5-star reviews, right? 5 stars means not enough people have reviewed it. 4 stars means it's okay. 4.5, that's the good spot. And so people go find that 4.5-star review game. They find 3 of them. They buy all 3, get them home, try and decide which one to get to the table. They try one of them, and if they don't like it, then okay, I just spent $100 on 3 games that I'm just not going to play. I tried it. Everybody's mental capacity was extinguished, and now we're done. Here we keep a much smaller selection of games, all stuff that we're intimately familiar with, and then when someone comes in, we sit with them, teach them some of the rules, sometimes play through part of the game. If they want, they can borrow the game and take it home. We offer that service free for members, which is an annual fee. Yeah, so it's a service free for members. They can take it home, try it, bring it back, and if they liked it, they can purchase it. We have over 200 or 300 titles, I think, open here for people to try, and we can order it for them, and then we always have 50 or 60 games, and again, it's a kind of a curated selection of games, so it's not just 60 random games, but 60 of the games that we think are going to hit for your group of 8 people, or if you have 2 players that want to play regularly, or 4 players that like deep strategy, or 6 players that want something light and more of a party game. So we try and hit every single category, and we're able to recommend those so that people don't end up with stuff that they're just not going to play. And then, we couple that with the events to make sure that, unlike a traditional retailer, we don't need to rely on volume or selling you something that you don't want in order to hit numbers that justify having a retail space. And having such a small footprint here in the Rust Belt means that we can, focus on what really matters and not focus on trying to hit that top line number or sell you additional here. You need to be buying games every week. It's not like that. It's a real lifestyle kind of place.
And I love that you have this gaming table right here. People can sit and you can lay out the game. And I'm looking at the shelves that are color-coded dots to tell you, because I know when I play games with my family, it's like, who's going to read the directions and who wants to teach us how to play? And I love that you have this system, from green being easy to learn from the basic rules. There's a red that says stop. This is a difficult learning curve, so obviously more challenging. Can either one of you tell me a little bit about some of your favorite games and why?
The games that I really kind of tend to go for are those quick 2-player games, those games that I can just play within like 15, 20 minutes with one other person, or I can play with like another couple that comes over. Those are kind of my favorite games. I'm talking like 15, 20 minutes, we're done, we can play it again or move on to something else. So for those, there's this game called King Domino, which the base game is dominoes. You're just matching these different tiles up, and you're making a 5x5 grid in front of you. So it's very much like a basic puzzle, but it has a really kind of hidden depth to it that you don't really realize at first. And then there's another card game called The Mind, which is kind of like a silent solitaire where we're all working together and we can't talk about what numbers are in our hand. You just kind of put it down when you think it's time to put that card down. And it sounds very weird, but you connect with the people that you're playing with because you're not talking, you're just trying to read each other's mind, which I think is very clever and very unique to play.
So I'd love to talk about how the industry itself has changed. I think for people, they think board games, they think Scrabble, Connect Four, Monopoly, that sort of thing. But the world of games has really changed. And talk about how you educate people about that and what you've seen.
Certainly 5 years ago when we started, I noticed that the culture of board games abroad, like I mentioned earlier, in Canada, Europe, is a lot more open-minded. I think in the United States, the industry in the 1990s was, Connect Four, Mousetrap, and then even, Risk, which was much older but gained a lot of popularity then, and even Monopoly, which was much older, had a lot of popularity in the 90s. And I think that the idea around board games was kind of fixed in this certain point in time. And we run into a lot of people that still think that those are the games that they want to play. So the best way to expose somebody to the games that the industry has moved more toward is just to get them to play them, which is really where the events are huge. So a lot of people come and think that they're going to play Uno or something and end up playing a game that they never thought would engage them so thoroughly in the game. And, as time has moved on, publishers have done a lot with mechanics and variety and theme to make sure that people are really engaged in what they're playing. When people find out, I didn't know it could be this way with regard to games, they think of them completely differently. And I think sometimes we have parents or people that come in and they think that they want to play a game so that they can, put their phone down, which is in part true. But the reality is once they find games that they like, they play games and they don't think about picking up their phone, right? It's the other way around. We as humans are really naturally drawn toward this over-the-table experience and the tactile experience. This is why people still like jigsaw puzzles, right? Like what's fun about jigsaw puzzles? Nobody can put their finger on it. I like finding, there's anytime I can find one piece that fits with another. No, it's not really. It's tactile. It's over the table. It allows your brain to do something very human that I think we all want to do. And I think board games a lot of times are multi-way interactive puzzles with some elements laid on top of them.
And you had said something to me about the longer you're doing it, this hobby turned into a business, that you had a realization that you didn't expect.
When we first started the store, I actually thought that I had a good handle on the breadth of the industry in terms of where it was going. And then it kind of had a stark awakening that I had no idea. And I checked online one point just to see how many games were released in 2015 and found that the database that I was looking at couldn't pull up enough results. It was over 5,000 games were released in 1 year. So, people all the time ask us, "Oh, have you played this game?" And I always say, I haven't played 100,000 games. Even if you've played, we have friends that say they've played 1,000 different games. That's a ton, but it's not even 1% of all the games that are out there. And so what I realized is that, the more I've gotten into it, the less and less for me it's actually about games. Something we knew from the beginning is that it's really about community. And the further we go, the more into the community we are, and the less it really is about games. Now, there's still the medium, and because we have such a familiarity with everything that exists so far, the games are still an important part of making sure that people stay engaged in a way that they couldn't if they were just sitting around talking, subconsciously pulling out their cell phones in the middle of conversation or something. So the games are still extremely important, but for us, I don't really keep up with what titles are coming out, et cetera, et cetera. I always look at, probably the top 10 every year and look for new mechanics and something's really kind of a, no pun intended, game changer in the industry. But our day-to-day is just about how do we reach more people, and we get closer and closer to that. How do we get people to break the idea that they want to play Rummy or Uno or Mousetrap or something that they played when they were a kid and associating that with games, and instead associate something that's going to be much, much more engaging, like Ticket to Ride or the Mind or Code Names, one of these games that's going to be way more impactful for them community-wise, and something that really we want them to be able to pull out at the table sometime when they would have never thought to otherwise.
So, Madison, if you could jump in on that same kind of topic, and then, and you know how people's perception of games has changed, and then if you could sum up all the ways that people can engage with the Loaded Die.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I really wanted to mention is how we get people come into the store, and because we're in the Rust Belt market, a lot of people just kind of happen upon us and don't realize that they're going to find a game store. So, over the past 5 years, we've seen a huge decrease in the amount of people that are asking if we carry Monopoly and Scrabble and things like that. But what I personally have found the most interesting about especially the games that we're keeping in stock on a regular basis, when we break down what each board game mechanic is, when I'm going to start carrying, like when I look at all of the intro level games that we call them, the stuff that's extremely easy, it's our green sticker on the wall. It's the stuff that you can read the rules, sit down, play it, and learn it all by yourself. Those types of games are the games that we're really trying to get those people that are looking for Monopoly and Scrabble. That's what we're trying to get them into. So when we're breaking down those board game mechanics, I'm looking for something where if somebody comes in and they say, "Oh, do you have Monopoly?" "No, but I have this game that's extremely similar, but a lot better because it was made 5 years ago, not in the 20s. "Oh, I really love to play Risk." "Oh, yeah, well, this game is like Risk, but if you combine it with blah, 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 blah." And that kind of stuff is how we, I think in our retail spot, how we're really trying to change the idea of it, is just introducing people to these new games that have those similarities that they can really connect with the new hobby. And if you're interested in, checking out these new titles and finding similar games to the ones that you used to love, we have 10 different weekly events all over Metro Detroit. We even have an event up in Ann Arbor weekly too, and for free, completely for free. And there's a library of 50 board games that are living at each of those locations too. So you can go on our website, you can check out our game locator tab, filter it, on the map based off your location, and really see. You can check out some of the titles, come to our weekly events. Our board game gurus are extremely knowledgeable. You can say, "Hey, I really want to play Monopoly," and they will sit you down at the right game. They're not going to sit you down at Monopoly. They'll sit you down in a game that is similar, because of this or that.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.